So I've been with the IESO for 9.5 years, nearly 10, and I've had roles in transmission system planning and in regulatory affairs before coming to Indigenous Relations. Notably in transmission planning, I spent about 8 years working on the Wataynikaneyap project and helping with cost-related negotiations with the governments and doing some technical analysis to help support that project. And that's really where I got to work with communities and see the need and the impact of programs, particularly in the far north. So that's something that's become a keen interest of mine. So that's kind of what led me here. So with that, my background is actually in engineering, and I also have some formal training in public policy and project management. So without further ado, I'll get into the presentation. So it's called Funding Climate-Friendly First Nation Energy Projects in the North, but I will provide a bit of other context on ways to get involved in the IESO. So what I'll go through today is I'll start a bit about the IESO. Some of you may not have heard about who we are and what it is we do, so I'll go through that to begin with. Also, just so that you're all aware, we have a new corporate Indigenous policy, so I'll provide some highlights on that. So an area where it's not particularly funding, but I think there might be some interest from the group here as it relates to potentially climate change as well as development in the north. So talking about some of our regional energy networks and regional planning. And then I'll get into specifically our funding and other programs, which are the Indigenous Energy Support Programs and Energy Efficiency Programs. So who is the IESO? The IESO, which stands for Independent Electricity System Operator, has a number of key important functions for the electricity system in Ontario. So one of the main ones in the top left is the reliable operation of the grid. So it is the IESO that every 5 minutes, make sure that the system is reliable, directs generators, directs transmitters to ensure that power gets where it's needed when it's needed. So that's one of our really key functions. And we have an operating room in the west end of Toronto. And that's where the operators work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So kind of in line with the work of, the reliability is the other side of it, which is the market side. So this is where we ensure that we're meeting those needs for reliability in a cost-effective way. So there is a market for electricity where there's bids and matching supply with demand to ensure the best cost of electricity. So there's that. We also do long-term planning. So we look out on a 20-year horizon and consider how communities are growing, how needs are changing, and make plans to address those needs in a way that is reliable and cost-effective. We also support innovation. So we do quite a bit of research in this, as well as we provide funding, which I'm not actually getting into the funding on that, and maybe I should have, but if there is any interest, I can follow up on some of our innovation funding. We also work closely with communities, so engagement is something that's really important to the IESO and getting out there and having conversations, particularly when you think about things like planning. We can't do that in a bubble. We really need information from communities to do the work that we do. And then the last one there is enabling province-wide energy efficiency. And this is really about the programs that we offer to help reduce consumption and improve efficiency for the electricity system. And I will get into that in a bit more detail. So just to start, our corporate Indigenous policy. So this is quite new to us. It's been about a month since it was formalized. So on October 8th, we released this, and it's really about IESO committing to its relationship with Indigenous communities and a key element of what the IESO is committing to is building capacity for equitable participation. So that's really the cornerstone of the policy. And it also commits to, within the IESO, working towards a workforce shift and improving cultural awareness and just skills and tools to be allies of Indigenous peoples in all the work that we do. And this policy really reflects a lot of the great work that IESO has been doing for a number of years, as well as commits the IESO to doing some further work as well. So in terms of priorities with the policy, there are 4 key areas of priorities. So the first is opportunities for Indigenous businesses. So we've reflected and realized that there are some existing inequities in terms of procurements, including those with the IESO. So looking to address some of those to improve accessibility for and equity for Indigenous businesses. The second one is for Indigenous youth. So in that, we are introducing a scholarship that provides bursaries for Indigenous youth pursuing education in fields that are related to the electricity sector. The third is opportunities for communities through unique programs. And this is the area where a lot of the work has already been done, and it's some of the programs that I'll get into a little bit later. But we do have specific programs for Indigenous communities within that priority. And then the last one is, as I've mentioned on the previous slide, about awareness building within the IESO. So committing to more corporate training across the IESO to improve how we work with communities. So I'm just going to get in really briefly. I know this isn't about funding, but I think that this could potentially be an area of interest for some of you, so I didn't want to miss out on that opportunity. So IESO has what we call regional electricity networks. So we have 5 across the province, and what these are is an opportunity to have a discussion about how things are going in that region in terms of how is the community growing, what are the needs and priorities of the community, what are the perspectives, and really have that dialogue to help inform how IESO does planning and how IESO works with communities to do planning. So you'll notice that there are a couple networks in the north, and you can sign up to get information about everything that's going on in your region and notifications about that and an ability to participate. And we have some new opportunities coming out with this too through an online tool that'll be launched later in the year. So I do encourage you to, if you're interested in getting some updates, to go to that website and join the network for your area. And we also have what we call forums. So these are opportunities for community discussions. Obviously, with the large scope of the areas, they're quite, well attended. So there's, in terms of discussion, there's a lot of people at the table, but these are planned for early in the new year in January. So encourage you to check those out. I'd also like to highlight that within those regional electricity networks, we have smaller regions where we conduct planning. So we conduct planning on a more localized basis than those 4 regions. Really, that's just so we can understand the electricity infrastructure better and do our analysis. But I just also wanted to highlight for you some of the areas that are currently in active planning. In particular, the Northwest. We've just kicked off the planning for the Northwest, and we have a webinar scheduled for December 8th. So if that's something you might be interested in hearing more about, you can either go to this website or feel free to email me after, and I can provide you some more specific information regarding the webinar on planning for the Northwest. So now I'm going to get into funding in a bit more detail. So the first area of funding is our Indigenous energy support programs. So we have 4 programs that we offer. The first one, looking on the left, is called the Indigenous Community Energy Plan Program. And this is one that many communities across the province have already sought funding from. I think we have somewhere in the range of 100 to 110 communities that are either in progress or have completed a community energy plan through this program. So what this program provides is that it supports communities and also organizations to develop and maintain an updated energy plan. So organizations can include, for your interest, tribal councils. So we have a couple of tribal councils where they've wanted to do a regional community energy plan that kind of brings together all the community energy plans within the region. So that's definitely a possibility through this program as well. We also have our education and capacity building program. This is our most flexible program, and it's really an initiative-based program. So what that means is when you're applying to it, you're really defining what it is that you want to do and the scope of what you want to do within specific categories that we have, but those are quite broad. And generally, this is just about building capacity, building skills in the energy sector. So yeah, that one's quite broad. And then we have our Indigenous Energy Projects program, which can fund renewable project in terms of development and capital costs for renewable projects in communities. It can also fund partnerships on transmission projects and innovative projects as well. And then the last one we have is the Community Energy Champion Program, and this funds a dedicated person in a community or organization. So again, tribal councils definitely are eligible for this program, and it provides funding for salary as well as some additional expenses associated with the role of the Community Energy Champion. So with that high-level understanding of the programs, I just wanted to walk through quickly how we see a progression through these programs and really like the ideal progression through the programs. So we really value the work of the CECs and people like Aisha who are able to provide that capacity for the community, and they're really there for the long haul through the various programs, and can bring continuity and consistency and engagement with the community throughout the programs. So we would really like to see communities and organizations start with this establishing internal capacity. So hiring that person that can be a champion, really, as the program name suggests, for all the energy programs and energy priorities in the community. So once you've established that internal capacity, that's a good stage to begin developing a plan and determining what are those energy priorities and how will we implement them. And then the next stage is that implementation, and implementation can be through either our Indigenous Energy Projects program or the energy efficiency programs, which I'll mention discuss a little bit later in the presentation. And because of the nature of the education and capacity building program, that this is really about ensuring that there's capacity to do the work that needs to be done when it needs to be done, is that this is something that could be accessed at any point along this process to ensure that the capacity is there to achieve the objectives of all the other programs. So this is how we see our program alignment working with each other. So just a little bit more details on what these programs provide in terms of funding. So for the Community Energy Champion, we have salary funding up to $50,000 per year for a 3-year contract. For CECs that have certain qualifications, we can also provide an additional $5,000 per year in top-up funding for that salary. And then we also have what we call an expense stream, and this is up to $15,000 for the duration of the 3-year contract. And this is for covering a variety of costs. It could be community engagement, it could be skills training for the CEC, it could be travel costs, all those things associated with the work of the CEC can be eligible costs. So in terms of that additional qualification top-up, we've identified a couple key certifications that we consider eligible, and these include the CIET, Certified Energy Manager, or Certified Energy Auditor programs, and also the Indigenous Clean Energy 2020 Catalyst program, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but it's a Canadian-wide organization that does really good intensive training for individuals in the energy sector. So we recognize that one as well, and additional qualifications could also be considered by the IESO for that. Yeah, and just a couple key points in terms of the CEC. I think we've determined that it's really important to have someone identified, because that was one of the biggest causes for delay in some of the programs. So just keeping in mind when candidates need to be identified for that position. The Indigenous Community Energy Plan program. So we provide funding in this one for both a new plan and an update to a plan. So I mentioned that over 100 number, that's in the new plan category. We only have a handful that have gotten to the stage of wanting to update their plan. So that's an opportunity for many communities across the province. But for a new plan, we offer $90,000 for the development of the plan, or for an update, it's $25,000. And for a remote community, we do provide an additional $5,000 to do either of those plans. We do, in terms of the requirements for this program, we have a minimum number of engagements required. So that's 3 for a new plan or 1 for an update. And that's just really recognizing that community involvement is really critical to buy into the plan and ensuring that it's a living document that doesn't just get completed and put on the shelf and forgotten. We're also recently introduced a requirement that if a community wants to do an update to a community energy plan, that they would need to have a CEC in place in order to do so. So that is a new requirement. And then we also have some requirements for what should be included in a plan. And really the new element here is about creating a community vision and being more clear about goals and action plans for implementation. So we think introducing some of these components will be really helpful for communities when they're building out their community energy plan, and really understanding what it is they want to do and why it is they want to do that. And I would also say, just for the interest of this group, that I think a large portion of communities are really prioritizing the environment in their community energy plans. So I think that's something that, you know, culturally is something that's important to communities, and community energy plans are definitely an opportunity to assess where environmental impacts can be minimized and what are the opportunities for that. So that's definitely something that could be explored as part of a community energy plan process. The next program, the Education and Capacity Building Program, I mentioned that this one is our most flexible one. So this one offers funding up to $125,000 over 2 years. So that's a per initiative basis. And then our 3, and I consider them quite broad categories, are engagement. So this can be anything from a workshop to other learning opportunity for community members. It could be something for students, you know, in schools. So this category is quite broad and just is pretty much any way where you involve the communities in some form of engagement. The second category is energy skills building, project training and certification. So this could be, again, it could be a workshop. So it could be a program that's designed by the community or organization specifically to meet the capacity building needs of the community, or it could be like a university certificate or college diploma. So all of those kinds of things related to energy can fit within that category. And then the last one is innovative knowledge and data sharing models. So this is just recognizing that communities are all different. They're all unique. They have their unique needs and ways of doing things. And this really recognizes that we want communities to think about ways that they can uniquely meet their capacity building needs, and be innovative in the way that they do that. So again, this one is quite broad, but yeah. And then in terms of the details, I've described that already, so I think I can move on to the next one. And our fourth of our energy support programs is called the Indigenous Energy Projects Program. So this is the one, as David mentioned earlier about Fort Severn, this is the one that was used to fund microgrid in Fort Severn, microgrid in Gull Bay. So a couple projects there that have had huge climate impacts because both communities were primarily served by diesel for their electricity consumption. So this one provides a lot of that capital cost funding to help support on the ground projects and implementation of community energy plan priorities. So in terms of the funding that's offered, each application can get up to $200,000, but it's not limited to how much a community can get over the life of the program. So for getting that $200,000, that's just for year one maybe, and you can apply again to the program for year 2, 3, and so on as you meet the requirements of each year's agreement with us. So if a project costs more than $200,000, there is still an opportunity for IESO to fund more than 200 over the life of the project over many years, up to a total of 80% of the cost of the project. So the first stream is called Projects and Partnerships, and it provides up to $150,000. And this can include a feasibility study, which provides up to $25,000, project development up to $150,000, and partnership assessment. So that one's primarily for a transmission project and doing some of the due diligence work required to develop a partnership for some of those projects, and that's up to $50,000. We also have an innovation stream, which is really, again, quite open, and it's up to $200,000. So considering innovative delivery models and technologies related to renewable energy projects. Yeah. So those are the 4 programs, and unfortunately with the timing, things are not ideal. So we did have an intake recently. We had it open for a month and it closed on Friday, actually, our intake for the 4 programs. So the team is currently in the process of doing the reviews for that. So if you've submitted an application to that, I have just a very high level timeline here for how things are going, but right now we're in the initial review stage. Soon heading into what we call clarification and feedback, followed by review committee. And then for these applicants that have already applied, we will enter into funding agreements early in the new year. But do not worry, we do plan to have another intake in 2021. And I think it's also a great idea to reach out to us and have a discussion with us about any ideas you have for a potential project, so we can work with you to help improve your application and get it ready for when a window becomes open. But I do expect that it would be early in the new year. I don't know yet what the timing will be, but the programs, I don't expect them to change. So if you do head to our website and take a look at the programs, it should be the same, or will be the same, for an intake early in the new year. So you can start getting a head start on getting those ready for when that intake does happen. Okay. So next, I'm going to get into our energy efficiency programs. So just, I'm sure, like with your background and the people that are here at the discussion today, that energy efficiency is something that you're aware of potentially, but if not, just wanted to say that it includes investments in upgrades to buildings and equipment to reduce the energy consumption of those buildings and that equipment, and in turn, it can reduce energy bills. And some of the primary examples, I think one of the biggest ones that is taken advantage of is lighting. So, replacing inefficient light bulbs, for example, to much more efficient and long-lasting light bulbs. There's also opportunities around heating, air conditioning, insulation, motors, and pumps. So IESO recognizes that I think our phrasing for this is that the cheapest kilowatt hour to serve is the kilowatt hour that you don't consume. So energy efficiency provides a lot of value to the grid, but it also provides a lot of value to consumers in terms of providing, home comfort and, improving the way you use energy in your home, and also, reducing your costs as well. So recognizing that, we offer some programs that help make it a little bit easier to make some of these energy efficiency changes, because we know that even though you're saving money in the long term, that some of these upgrades could be high cost in the near term, and that's not something that's feasible for everyone. So we do provide some incentives to help support access to energy efficiency opportunities. So some of the current residential programs that we offer is the first one is called the Home Assistance Program, and this one is offered across the province for Indigenous, non-Indigenous on an income qualified basis. So depending on the number of people in the household and the household income, you may qualify for this program. We also have some pretty flexible requirements in terms of demonstrating those incomes. I know for some communities it's a challenge sometimes to demonstrate that you are income qualified, even if you are. So that is something that we definitely recognize, and we are quite flexible in how that's demonstrated. So if there is any concern, I still encourage folks to reach out for the program and see what they can get through that program. So in addition to that program, we also are currently running some First Nations specific programs, and there are 3 that are underway right now. The first one is called Conservation on the Coast. So this is for the 3 communities that are on the west side of the James Bay. They're connected to the grid, and this program provides really deep retrofits to the homes in the community, and has had some substantial impact on uh, just general comfort level in homes, and retention of heat in the winter within homes. So that one has been a really successful program. We also have the First Nations Conservation Program, which was offered to grid-connected communities across the province. For 2019, we had 15 communities identified, and then for 2020, we had 31 communities. This one has been a bit of a challenge with the pandemic this year, but we're still looking at ways that we can continue to offer this program to the communities that were planned for 2020. So we'll have to keep you posted on how we might be able to do that. And then the third program that we currently offer is for remote communities, and this one is just a pilot for now. So this one is for 4 communities right now that we're working with to do some upgrades in homes in those communities, to really prepare homeowners for grid connection and what it means to be connected to the grid. And those are communities that are planned for connection through the Wataynikaneyap project. And I've included on the bottom of the page here a link to Save on Energy, which is where you can find information about all of our residential and non-residential programs. So I encourage you to take a look at that after. Just noting that because Conservation on the Coast and the Remotes pilot on just a handful of communities, that those ones aren't actually included on the web page, but the First Nations Conservation Program is. Okay, and then we also at the IESO offer programs for small businesses, and there are 3 programs that are described here. So the first one, I'll start on the left, is called the Retrofit Program. So this one is for commercial, institutional, industrial customers, and it's really like a large suite, I guess, of measures that can be delivered for a business, and this program can fund up to 50% of the cost for the project, and it can can include upgrades to lighting, HVAC, and other equipment, noting that the HVAC does have to be tied to electricity in order to qualify for this. And it really is based on the customer and the plan that they want to undertake for the program. We also have one that a lot of communities have been accessing, which is the Small Business Lighting Program. And one of the great features about this program is it really is a turnkey solution. So we have vendors that can come make an assessment and basically do it all for you and fund up to $2,000 of the project cost, and that can also be up to 100% of the project cost if the cost is only $2,000 or less. So that can fund that. The scope is, of course, only lighting, but it is quite an easy program from a participant perspective. So there's an opportunity there. And then the third program is the Energy Manager program, and this is really for larger industrial types of facilities, and it funds a dedicated energy manager to look at energy saving opportunities for that business and do that continuous work for that. So I mentioned that those are current programs. We do have a plan to continue to build out programs beyond 2020. So we are mandated to do these programs by the Minister of Energy, Northern Development and Mines, and the current suite of programs is scheduled to end at the end of this year, with some continuing in some capacity to just close out on deliverables into 2021. But in this new framework, we do have a portion of funding that is dedicated to First Nation communities, and we're currently in the process of designing what those programs look like. So we held a workshop on October 22nd, and that was our first opportunity to speak with communities about what these programs could look like. And we are planning a second engagement, and it's this Friday. So I encourage you, if you are interested, to attend that engagement and give us some feedback on our programs. This one in particular will be focused on commercial and institutional for First Nation on reserve communities, and the focus is also really on band-run buildings. So if there is some interest there, I really encourage you to join that webinar. And I think I just have one more thing that I just wanted to tack on the end, and then I'll close out and we can maybe ask some questions. But I just wanted to make sure you also are aware that we are trying to build a network of our community energy champions. So instead of having community energy champions that are kind of scattered across the province, doing their own thing with the community and not really engaging with each other, we really wanted to provide this opportunity for them to come together and learn from each other and really develop a community. So we're launching what we're calling the CC Network, which is part of an online engagement tool called IESO Connects. And although it is really focused at CECs, it won't be limited in access. So if you're doing something that's similar to the work of a CEC, but maybe more climate focused, I still encourage you to join the conversation with the CECs and energy experts, and make those connections and ask questions and build community through that. So more to come on that. But yeah, I think that is all I have for today. So I do have some emails here where you can contact us. I did go through a lot of information here and had a lot of different websites to check things out, but if you've forgotten what that website is, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And I also have my personal email on the last slide. So yeah, so thank you so much for having me. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.